Supreme Court lets the president fire SEC and CFTC heads at will. The Supreme Court ruled that the president can remove the heads of independent federal agencies at will, overturning a precedent that had stood since 1935. CoinDesk reported the decision as 6-3, framing it around the structural shift in how much insulation agency commissioners now have from the White House. The ruling reaches every independent agency, including the two that police crypto in the United States, the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. For an industry that spent years arguing over which regulator has jurisdiction and what counts as a security, the question of who sits atop those agencies and how easily they can be replaced just became more consequential than the boundary disputes themselves. A 91-year-old guardrail comes down. The precedent at issue dated to 1935 and had long limited a president's ability to fire commissioners at independent agencies without cause. That insulation was the legal basis for the idea that bodies like the SEC and CFTC operate at arm's length from the sitting administration. Commissioners served fixed terms and could, in theory, hold a regulatory line that the White House disliked. Removing that protection changes the incentive structure. An SEC or CFTC chair who can be dismissed at will has a different relationship with the executive branch than one who cannot. Sources differ on the exact vote. CoinDesk reported the agency removal ruling as 6-3, while Reuters referenced a 5-4 decision tied to Federal Reserve independence and a quote about Kevin Warsh. Whether those describe the same case or parallel rulings issued the same day, the direction is consistent. The court narrowed the legal space in which independent agencies operate. The SEC and CFTC sit directly in scope. Crypto regulation in the U.S. runs almost entirely through these two agencies. The SEC has driven the securities law fights with exchanges and token issuers. The CFTC has positioned itself as the lighter touch home for Bitcoin and Ether as commodities, and pending market structure legislation would hand it a larger role. If commissioners can be removed at will, the agency's posture toward digital assets becomes a more direct extension of whoever holds the White House. A friendly administration can install and retain leadership that slows enforcement. A hostile one can clear the deck and reverse course. The policy whiplash that crypto firms already experience between administrations could grow sharper because the personnel changes that drive it would face fewer legal obstacles. That cuts both ways. The same mechanism that could ease enforcement under one president could intensify it under the next. Fed independence is the louder subplot. The Reuters thread points at the bigger market question hanging over the ruling: the Federal Reserve. The Fed is structured as an independent agency, and its independence from political pressure is a foundational assumption for bond and currency markets. Any reading of the decision that erodes that independence feeds directly into rate expectations, and rate expectations move risk assets, crypto included. The reference to Kevin Warsh, a longtime contender for Fed leadership, signals that markets are already pricing the personnel angle. Crypto does not trade in isolation from the macro rate picture. A central bank seen as more responsive to the executive branch changes the calculus for the dollar, for Treasury yields, and for every asset measured against them. The ruling lands into extreme fear. The timing is unkind. As of June 30, 2026, Bitcoin trades at 59,115, down 1.0% on the day and 5.3% over the week. Ether sits at 1576, XRP at 1.04, and the Crypto Fear and Greed Index reads 17, deep in extreme fear. The decision also arrives on the final day of the EU's MiCA authorization deadline, so global regulatory attention is concentrated in a single news window. For now, the ruling is structural rather than operational. No SEC or CFTC commissioner has been removed on the back of it, and no enforcement action has changed. The shift is in what is now legally possible. Crypto businesses that built compliance strategies around the assumption of stable, insulated regulators are operating under a different set of rules about how durable any given regulatory stance will be.